It was around 3 p.m. on a sunny Friday afternoon in Willow Creek, a quiet, upper-middle-class suburban neighborhood known for white picket fences, trimmed lawns, and an overly aggressive HOA. That day, I had just come back from a 2-week work trip to Vegas, finally ready to enjoy my brand-new cherry red 2023 Corvette Stingray. I parked it right outside my house like I always did, next to the curb on my private property. I hadn't even stepped out of the car when I heard a screeching voice from across the road. "Excuse me, excuse me. That car is not allowed here." I looked up, and there she was, Karen Malone. Mid-40s, platinum blonde with a sharp bob over sprayed tan skin, dressed like she was heading to a golf club she didn't belong to. She had the kind of energy that sucked the peace out of a perfectly nice day. She marched across the street in her kitten heels, pointing furiously at my car like it was some kind of alien spacecraft. "This is HOA-regulated space. You can't just bring illegal cars into this community like you own the place," she barked. I blinked. "Karen, it's my driveway. I do own the place." That's when she did the unthinkable. She reached into her handbag, pulled out what looked like some kind of citation form with a giant HOA logo at the top, and slapped it on my windshield. Then, without warning, she yanked open the driver's side door, with me still inside. "Out," she screeched. "This vehicle is not registered with HOA, and I have every right to impound it." Before I could react, she actually climbed halfway inside, one stiletto on the pavement and the other on my floor mat. She grabbed the steering wheel like she was about to drive off. That's when I hit the emergency alert button on my key fob. The Corvette blared its alarm, and my security app pinged the cops immediately. But before the sound even faded, I saw red and blue lights flashing down the street. And Karen? She was still yelling, "It's my car now." Just as she tried to shift into reverse, 2 police cruisers blocked the driveway. One officer jumped out, hand on his holster, shouting, "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Karen froze. But her next words? They sent everybody's jaw dropping. She looked the cop dead in the eye and screamed, "I am the HOA. I make the rules. Arrest him. He's trespassing on my property." Let me tell you how we got to the moment where a woman in pearls and pink lipstick tried to steal my Corvette, claiming she was the law of the land. My name's Brad Carson. I'm a 36-year-old mechanical engineer who recently moved back into my late uncle's home after inheriting it through his will. It's a beautiful colonial-style house with wraparound porches, a garden full of daisies, and now a shiny red Corvette that was my welcome back to life gift to myself after a brutal divorce. I was just trying to lay low, enjoy my peace, and rebuild quietly. The house wasn't part of the HOA officially. It was grandfathered out before the association was even formed. But apparently, no one told Karen Malone that. Or she just didn't care. Karen had self-appointed herself president of the HOA 3 years ago when the last guy resigned after she reportedly bullied him out of the job. Since then, she treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom, complete with made-up bylaws and bogus fine slips. At first, I ignored her little antics. When she rang my doorbell 2 days after I moved in, holding a rule book and a packet titled New Resident Expectations, I politely told her I wasn't a member of the HOA and shut the door. But that only made things worse. She began passive-aggressively dropping notices of violation in my mailbox. Lawn is 2 inches too high. Garage door color does not match community aesthetic. Unregistered vehicle present, referring to my old Ford truck. Then she started standing across the street during the mornings with binoculars. Literally. Neighbors even made a running joke about it, calling her Binocular Barbie. But things turned from annoying to terrifying the day she cornered my younger sister, Ellie. Ellie had come over to help me install a shelf. She was 22, petite, kind-hearted, and had nothing to do with this HOA mess. Karen approached her outside and asked, "Are you living here now? Because we don't allow roommates or unapproved tenants." Ellie told me she felt intimidated and scared. That was the final straw. I walked over to Karen's house that evening and told her, again, firmly but calmly, "My home is not under your HOA. You have no legal authority here. Leave us alone." She slammed her door in my face. But the next morning, I woke up to see a bright orange sticker on my car. Warning: vehicle in violation, subject to tow. I was furious, but I kept calm. I checked the security cameras I had installed after the Ellie incident. There she was, just after 2:15 a.m., creeping onto my property with gloves and a roll of orange stickers. I took the footage to the local precinct. Officer Daniels, a stocky, no-nonsense guy, reviewed it and raised an eyebrow. You sure she's not just a neighborhood nuisance? She tried to find me, intimidate my sister, and now she's tampering with my vehicle. Daniels nodded. If she lays one more hand on your car, call us immediately. I never imagined I'd need that advice so soon. Because just 4 days later, after I bought my Corvette and parked it right in that same driveway, she made her biggest mistake. She tried to steal it. As the cop screamed at her to get out of the vehicle, Karen clutched the steering wheel and screamed something so outrageous, so completely unhinged, it left the officers momentarily stunned. I am the HOA. This is all mine. What happened next? Let's just say it involved zip ties, a very loud Karen, and half the neighborhood recording on their phones. The police cruiser carrying Karen had barely turned the corner when something even crazier happened. A group of neighbors, maybe 10 of them, gathered right in front of my yard, each holding a manila folder with their names scribbled on the front in Karen's chicken scratch handwriting. She had one of these on me too, said Mr. Jenkins, a retired Navy vet who lived next door. She accused me of unauthorized flags and tried to fine me for displaying the American flag on my porch, he added with an eye roll. Miss Carol from across the street opened her file right there on the grass. Inside were printed photos of her backyard, taken through her fence. Is that my daughter's birthday party? She whispered, trembling. It was clear now. Karen had been spying on the entire block. And it didn't stop there. One neighbor held up a letter from the HOA board, claiming their flower pots were a security hazard. Another found a fake invoice for a $350 noise violation they'd refused to pay because they never even had a party. All fake. All Karen. That's when I said, y'all, we need to talk to a lawyer. Together. About an hour after Karen's arrest, Officer Daniels returned to my house with a full printed report. He sat down on my porch swing and handed it to me. She'll likely face charges for attempted grand theft auto, trespassing, and resisting arrest, he said. But Brad, it's bigger than just your car. I flipped through the report. Inside were copies of all the fake violations Karen had filed in the past 2 years. Some had homeowners' forged signatures. Some had dollar amounts attached, most of them paid by terrified elderly neighbors who didn't know any better. She's been collecting money? I asked. Daniels nodded. Unlawfully, yes. From at least 7 residents. That's when I realized something that chilled me. Karen didn't just believe she was the HOA. She believed she owned the people in it. The actual HOA board, yes, the real one, finally stepped up. Turns out, Karen had been voted out as president over a year ago, but never told anyone. She kept the badge, the email account, and the printed violation slips. She'd been acting as a rogue enforcer for months, completely unchecked. When board president Allison Banks found out about the arrest, she showed up at my home the next day in a state of panic. I had no idea she was still issuing citations, Allison said, holding her hands up. We thought she'd moved to Arizona last winter. She's been here the whole time, I replied. Terrorizing people. Allison sighed and said, she's forged our signatures too. She brought her own file, one that had been found in Karen's Lexus. Inside was a mock proposal to expand the HOA's reach into my property and 3 other surrounding homes. The signatures at the bottom? Completely fake. Karen was trying to absorb non-HOA homes into the HOA, Allison said. Without consent. I asked. She wanted your land, and your car was just the first prize. 3 days after the arrest, we held an emergency neighborhood town hall at the local rec center. Over 40 residents came out. Some were angry. Some were embarrassed they'd believe Karen's fake fines. Others, especially the elderly, were simply shaken. I stood up and said, this isn't about a car anymore. It's about abuse. It's about someone who thought she could control people with fear. That's when Mr. Jenkins stood beside me and added, I say we take back our peace." Then Carol said, "And file a lawsuit." The room erupted in applause. We agreed to hire an attorney as a group. The goal? Expose every forgery, get every false fee refunded, and file civil charges against Karen for fraud and harassment. Just as things were calming down, someone from the back of the room stood up. A teenage boy, maybe 16. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, shaking slightly, "but I think my mom is in danger." The room went quiet. My mom works as Karen's housekeeper. She's been missing since Friday night, the night of the arrest. Everyone looked at each other, concerned. Karen always made her stay late, said she needed help with HOA paperwork. But my mom texted me weird things like "don't trust anyone" and "shred the folder in the safe." Then her phone went dead. My heart sank. "Does she live with Karen?" I asked. The boy shook his head. "No. But I know Karen had a second property, some small house behind the hill. She said it was her private office." Officer Daniels, who had quietly slipped into the back of the meeting, stepped forward. "Can you show me where it is?" he asked the boy. The teen nodded. "Yes, sir." Officer Daniels turned to the crowd. "Folks, looks like Karen's secrets aren't done unraveling just yet." 2 squad cars and 3 neighbors, including myself and Mr. Jenkins, followed Officer Daniels and the teenager named Miguel to the edge of Willow Creek. Miguel's hands trembled as he pointed through the trees. "There. That's the back trail. Karen made my mom follow her there every Thursday," he said. "She told us not to tell anyone. She said if we did, the HOA would take our house." I glanced at Daniels. His jaw clenched as he nodded toward the trail. "You 3, stay behind me," he said, hand hovering over his holster. "Don't touch anything." We followed the officer down the narrow dirt path. Birds scattered above us. The wind whistled through dry branches. And there, barely visible behind wild vines and overgrown weeds, stood a small white structure. It looked like a tool shed at first. But when Daniel stepped closer and pushed the door open with his flashlight in hand, what we saw made every hair on my arm stand straight up. The inside was covered wall to wall with folders, maps, surveillance photos, and dozens of clipboards. Each clipboard had a name from a neighborhood. Each one had pages and pages of notes. Some even had printed screenshots from residents' social media accounts. It was like a war bunker, but instead of weapons, it was filled with invasions of privacy. Then we found something even worse. A mattress. A single stained mattress with a blanket, a small broken lamp, and a mini fridge filled with expired food. Daniels muttered, "Someone's been sleeping here." And then Miguel screamed, That's my mom's sweater." Looking back, I remember seeing Karen driving through that side of the neighborhood more than once. I had assumed she was just scoping out other people to harass, but she had been using this remote shed as her secret base. It turns out Karen had created a fake HOA enforcement branch that never existed. She told her housekeeper, Maria, that she was her confidential assistant. She made Maria transcribe notes, organize files, and even take covert pictures. Maria didn't want to lose her job. She needed the money, so she went along with it. Until recently, Daniels called for backup. Crime scene tape went up around the cabin. Meanwhile, Miguel clutched his mom's sweater, quietly crying. That's when I noticed something under the mattress, a small black leather-bound notebook. On the first page, it said in shaky handwriting, "If anything happens to me, please show this to the police. Maria." Officer Daniels scanned through it quickly. There were handwritten entries like, "She says the board doesn't know. She took cash from Mr. Halbert. Promised him HOA immunity. She's planning to report Brad's Corvette stolen. Told me not to say anything. And then, she keeps mentioning a black safe. She hides real money there." The safe wasn't in the cabin, but Daniels had a guess. Back at Karen's actual home, still sealed off for investigation, officers entered with a search warrant and found the safe under a loose floorboard in the closet. What was inside? $27,000 in cash. A burner phone with encrypted messages. A fake badge labeled State Housing Inspector. and a master key that opened at least 6 neighborhood gate locks. Karen wasn't just impersonating the HOA. She was pretending to be a government official. She had created a little empire of intimidation and was raking in cash from terrified residents, off the books. It all made sense now. Later that night, Daniels got a call. Maria had walked into the local precinct, disheveled, exhausted, but alive. She told them she'd run from the cabin the night Karen got arrested. She was afraid Karen had people helping her, so she hid with a cousin out of town until she felt safe. But what shocked us most, she wasn't working alone, Maria said. There's a man. His name is David Weller. He helped fake the documents. Said he was part of a bigger plan to expand HOA zones across other neighborhoods. He has copies of all the files. Daniels asked, "Do you know where he is?" Maria nodded slowly. Karen said he was waiting for her to get control of the Corvette house. That's Brad's place, right? I froze. My phone buzzed at that exact moment. Unknown number. Enjoy the calm, Brad. Because once Karen's out, your car's just the start. I showed the officer the text. Daniels looked at me and said, "Brad, you may want to stay somewhere else tonight." It was 1:57 a.m. I sat in the dark living room of my house, lights off, phone in one hand, a baseball bat in the other. Outside, rain tapped steadily against the window panes, and thunder echoed in the distance. Officer Daniels had warned me. If that man David Weller is real, and if he's tied to Karen, your house may be next. So I didn't sleep. I waited. Police cruisers were hidden 2 houses down, engines off, officers stationed quietly in my backyard and across the street. They were ready. I was ready. And just like clockwork, at exactly 2:04 a.m., the motion sensor near my garage lit up. A dark figure wearing a hoodie crept into my driveway. He knelt beside my Corvette, my brand new Pride, and pulled something from his backpack. A small black device. A signal jammer. He was trying to bypass the car alarm. But he wasn't alone. A second figure, slimmer, taller, emerged from the shadows and moved toward my front door. He pulled out a key. The master key from Karen's safe. The taller figure slid the key into my front door and slowly turned the knob. Click. He stepped inside. As soon as he entered, I clicked my flashlight on, aimed directly at his face. He froze, hand halfway into his jacket. Behind me, 3 officers stormed from the kitchen and shouted, "Down, hands up, move and you'll be shot." He hit the floor. Outside, the man near the Corvette made a run for it, but didn't make it far. 2 officers tackled him near the neighbor's mailbox. His backpack fell open, spilling tools, lockpicks, and forged IDs. They cuffed both men. I stepped outside in the rain, heart pounding. The taller one, the one who entered my house, glared at me with ice in his eyes. "You don't even know what you've started," he muttered. Daniels turned to him. "David Weller, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, and more charges that'll be stacked by sunrise." But David smiled. "Karen's not done," he said. "She knew you trapped me. That's why she filed a lawsuit from jail." The next morning, Daniels brought me a copy of the lawsuit Karen had filed from her cell. It was wild. She was suing me for public humiliation, theft of HOA property, yes, referring to my own house, and get this, emotional trauma resulting from entrapment. And she wasn't just suing me. She had named the entire HOA board, 10 neighbors, and even the local police department. It was like a cartoon villain story. "She's trying to spin herself as the victim," I said. Daniels nodded. "That's her game. If she can cause enough chaos, she thinks people will settle to shut her up." But the community wasn't having it. We held another emergency town meeting, this time at the town courthouse. People were scared, shaken, angry. "How can someone cause this much damage and still sue us?" one neighbor asked. "What if she gets out on bail?" another whispered. That's when something amazing happened. Maria, the woman Karen had manipulated, overworked, and silenced, stepped forward. She took the microphone and said, "She may have filed a lawsuit, but I filed the truth." She had submitted a sworn affidavit and handed over all the evidence to the DA's office. Not just about Karen, but about David Weller. The payments, the scheme, the threats. Her courage turned the tide. The community started a petition to make sure Karen remained behind bars until trial. 2 nights later, I received another message. Not a text, not an email, a letter, handwritten, no return address, just my name on the envelope. Inside it said, "I'm coming home soon, Brad. The HOA isn't gone. It's just getting started." At the bottom, a lipstick kiss and a fingerprint. The courtroom was tense. Every seat was filled. Neighbors from Willow Creek sat shoulder to shoulder, whispering anxiously, some holding folders, others simply staring ahead. The entire town had come to watch what felt like a movie finale. At the defense table sat Karen Malone, hair flattened instead of her usual big curls, wearing a beige prison jumpsuit. But even now, with handcuffs around her wrists, she looked smug, as if she still believed she'd walk out free. Across from her, I sat beside our neighborhood's legal team. Maria was there too, sitting just behind us with her son Miguel, who clutched her hand tightly. Judge Florence Riley entered and called the room to order. Case number 32842. The State of Maryland versus Karen Malone and David Weller. In the weeks leading to the trial, everything escalated. Karen had managed to delay the hearing 3 times, each time citing emotional stress or conflict with legal counsel. But the DA wasn't playing around anymore. With Maria's signed affidavit, surveillance footage from the Corvette incident, and the contents of the hidden HOA bunker, they had built a bulletproof case. David Weller, caught red-handed during the break-in, was offered a deal, full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. He took it. And his testimony? It blew the doors wide open. He admitted that Karen had paid him over $15,000 to forge violation documents, create fake expansion papers, and assist in stealing properties and vehicles. She called it growing her kingdom, he said. She wanted to be queen of the whole subdivision, even if it meant bending the law. When the DA called me up to testify, I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly. I didn't ask to be in a war with my neighbor. I just wanted to park my car in my own driveway. But Karen didn't see neighbors. She saw targets. She tried to make my car her property. She tried to make my home her headquarters. And when that didn't work, she sent people in the night to take it all by force. Karen rolled her eyes at that, but I didn't stop. She scared good people. She bullied the elderly. She tricked her own housekeeper into breaking the law. And when she got caught, she still thought she could sue the truth into silence. I turned to face her now. But this community stood together. We won't be scared anymore. When I stepped down, you could feel the power shift in the room. Karen was allowed to testify in her defense. And true to form, she lied through her teeth. She claimed she had mental health struggles. She said she thought the HOA expansion was real. She blamed David Weller. She even tried to flip the entire story, claiming I had lured her into the car that day to humiliate her. Gasps echoed across the room. Then she made the biggest mistake of her trial. I acted out of a duty to protect this neighborhood, she said. I was the only one doing what needed to be done. Brad Carson. He moved in and disrespected everything we built. He brought chaos. He made me do what I did. That's when Judge Riley raised her gavel slightly and said, "Miss Malone, are you admitting to orchestrating the actions described in these charges?" Karen paused, then said, "I am." Her lawyer slumped in his chair. The jury deliberated for only 90 minutes. The foreman stood and read the verdict with a steady voice. On the count of attempted vehicle theft, guilty. On the count of fraud and forgery, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit theft, guilty. On the count of criminal impersonation, guilty. On the count of harassment and coercion, guilty. Karen's face went blank. Judge Riley sentenced her to 12 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 9. David Weller got 6 years with no early release. The courtroom erupted in relief. People cried. Others clapped. Maria hugged her son so tightly he nearly popped. Justice had finally arrived. It's been 6 months since the trial. The Corvette? still shines in my driveway. The fake violations were wiped from everyone's records. All the money Karen stole was ordered to be returned, some of it from her seized bank accounts, the rest from the property she tried to claim. Maria got a real job at the local community center. Miguel joined a youth program and now dreams of becoming a cop. The HOA? It's run by real volunteers now. Fair ones. And every month, we have block parties on the same street where Karen once stalked with her clipboard like a tyrant. One sunny morning, I opened my mailbox and found a plain, white envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Karen, smiling in an orange jumpsuit, sitting on a prison bench, holding up a piece of paper that read, 12 years? I've got time to plan. I smiled and slipped the photo into a drawer. Then I locked my Corvette and walked back inside. Let her plan. We're ready now.